as out of the total revenue of Ruter, I think we spend 0.89% on development projects. I don't think you find any private company that have this risk profile, that they use so little in an industry that's in a disruption. I think, if you see that, if you're in this industry is disrupting and the risk of stranded assets is high and you spend a lot of money on infrastructure, what is more risky?
Yeah.
I would say doing nothing is by far the riskiest. So actually we created the first Norwegian language-based language model in Norway. We've actually beat the main university with a month.
Okay.
Because we needed a better use of the Norwegian language. We even included the Norwegian and Swedish swear word list, so we can actually get the temperature of the language of the customers. But to do this, we could actually take out some people that actually control the air conditioning systems, because we can actually see it from the data that we switched on. If it still didn't work, we had the customers as the real-time witnesses whether it functioned. So we could actually cut back on quality that people actually went to the bus depots and worked. Is their air conditioning switched on? Is it working? So doing it this way, we could actually replace processes with the AI and actually get the benefits out of the system. But this is nothing to do what is now coming in the next wave, and that is it by any means much more serious.
Welcome to the Mobility Innovators Podcast.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Mobility Innovator Podcast. I'm your host, Jaspal Singh. On this podcast, we bring you conversation with leaders shaping the future of mobility and transportation across the world. Today, we are heading to Oslo, Norway, one of the most forward-thinking city when it comes to public transport and sustainable mobility. I'm really pleased to welcome Bernt Reitan Jenssen, the CEO of Ruter AS. Bernt has been leading Ruter since its inception in 2008 and has played a key role in transforming how mobility is planned, delivered, and experienced in Oslo region. Now it's time to listen and learn. Hello, Bernt. Welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me.
No, it's a pleasure. I know you have a really busy schedule and a lot of stuff are happening in Oslo. So I really want to spend time next 1 hour, 1.5 hours to a little bit know more about you and what we are doing in Oslo, some of the exciting stuff. But before discussing about the city and transportation and all, I want to discuss about your personal journey because it's quite interesting. I saw you started your career in logistic and postal service, and then you moved to public transport when Ruter was created in 2008. You were moving parcels and goods, and now you're moving people. So I want to know what drove you that shift from moving from logistic to public transportation. And what is more interesting or challenging? Is it moving goods and logistic is more challenging or interesting, or is people?
Well, in a funny way, you can say that it's not much difference coming to an industry that are used to moving people like parcels,
Yeah.
And well, I think there's something to that, that I've been in some sort of logistics the most of my career, but then again, the same experience happened almost everywhere, and that has to do with actually seeing the customers in all these logistics. The people that we are moving, or even if it's their parcels or mail we're moving, there are still personal needs and customers behind all of this. And I think being more customer centric, I haven't been anywhere which can gain from being more customer centric. If you're going to learn about the future, where else should you go than to your customers? Sometimes you have to take them to a part of the future that you think will happen and learn from them. Otherwise, they do what Henry Ford said. If you ask the customers today, when he introduced automobiles, he said they just want faster horses. They don't understand the concept, and that is still sometimes a bit true. But then again, you have to help them a bit and see actually how you can learn what they would expect from you in the future. So I wouldn't say that's much different whether you work for public transport than you work for the Postal Service and for any transportation company, and even probably most companies that has customers in that way. So it wasn't much of a big change. It was a big restructuring job to do. That's what I love. If there is transformation to be done, I just love it. And on top of that, you can actually work with something that means something for people in their lives. What a privilege we have to work in that sort of business.
And why public transport? Because you were doing great with postal service and logistic. And when this was a new agency, you were at the leadership position in a very established firm. Why did you decide to join a company which was just new and giving a new responsibility, dealing with all these new kind of discussion and topic? What motivated you to move to public transportation?
Well, they wanted to do something that hadn't been done for a long time. I think they came up with the idea of merging the transportation system in the city of Oslo with the surrounding county.
Yeah.
They say that it was so much to gain from it. It should be done immediately. So it only took 43 years and 7 attempts. And who could say no to a challenge like that? I think it also helped that some of my best friends say that these people have, been quarreling for years, and it's like pouring money into a black hole. It's that the reputation the industry had at that stage, I must say mostly unfair to some cases, in some instances, but still, when you hear something like that, you just can't say no, can you?
That's true.
It's gonna be a very interesting journey, and I have to tell you, it has overcome it has been much more interesting than I ever imagined. And I promised, I remember, to stay for 4 years. It's now 18 years ago.
18 years.
I have a hard time finding anything more interesting. So that's the reason why I've stayed on.
No, that's true. I mean, surviving and thriving for 18 years, that's really great. And like you mentioned, many cities Oslo was thinking for 43 years. I know many cities which are deciding for 50 years and 60 years, and they still couldn't happen to create a structure like what Oslo has managed to do. So it's very interesting what Oslo has. I mean, it's a capital city of Norway. It's a global podcast. So just for information for the listener, with the population of around 724,000 inhabitants. And Ruter is a public transport authority of the Oslo region. You guys are managing the whole public transport structure. Can you share a little bit more about what Ruter is and why you would say the Ruter is fundamentally different from typical transit agencies? I mean, like you mentioned, you find this job interesting and working for last 18 years. So what make it like so interesting for you to spend 18 years of your life? And do you think Ruter as a transport provider or something broader today? Because I'm pretty sure your vision is not to work as a transport authority. You wanted to create something big, and that's why you decided to do this job. So what are the different feature of Ruter you will tell to the listener?
Yeah, first of all, the capital has the amount of inhabitants you just mentioned, but the surrounding county, creating together a region, has about the same amount of inhabitants. Altogether, it's about 1.3 million. And the administrative borders, of human organization is sometimes in the way of creating, a customer-friendly solution. The customers doesn't really care where these administrative borders go if they cross their journeys.
Yeah.
So just taking what I said about this customer-centric perspective is to try to look away and from these borders that are put there, by man. And so that was a challenge. And to look upon this as a labor market and look at solutions, how to get people to work, how to get them home, how to get students to schools, and how to dig into this market of leisure travels. It's a region that have all these customers with these needs. So I think one of the first things that was a part of going to Ruter was to create this transport system in this way. and and since they have tried so many times doing it, my first task was, together with my chairman of the board, which actually recruited me, to set this up. Basically, we in less than a year made all the contracts, all the negotiations. We had an excellent team from the two counties, from Oslo and Akershus, which is the name of the surrounding county. And we actually agreed on one thing: not to have separate lawyers, just nominate one that we all trust. I think probably that was one of the main reasons it was possible to do this. But I think most of all, it was a political will to do it. They saw that this had to be done, and then you have to make some compromises. If everybody wants to decide more than the others, it won't happen. So here you have to find good compromises. And then when you did that, you also had to do it in organizing it in a way. And that's a bit different with Ruter. They actually decided to organize this as basically a normal limited company, a shareholding company. And the shareholding is split in 60-40 between the two counties, basically creating a joint venture, and on top of this, they put a business board, a board with no active politicians. There are people in my board that have political experience. I guess you need to have that. And I, after some years, also developed some political experience. So you actually can see how the systems work, how you can balance on this edge between business and political decision structures. But I report to a board, and the board and the company and the shares are all owned by the city and the county. And they actually nominate the board, and they have the general assembly, and basically democracy can impose any decision on Ruter, but they have to go this structure, But then again, they create this distance, between the political decisions and the decision in the company, which is actually beneficial for the politicians as well, because it's possible for us to take unpopular decisions as well. That's very hard being a politician. Even to close a station or a bus stop could be very, very hard, even though it makes very much sense to do it. It's easier to set the targets for us, the objectives, and then let us come up with a plan and execute the plan instead of taking all these decisions in the city hall. So it basically creates a more fast-moving construction and organization than being politically dependent on each and every decision. Even though it could be small or big decisions, the strategy, we have to communicate with the city and the county. Otherwise, if that's not compatible with what they want to do, it's get into a stalemate quite easily. But aside from that, a lot of the day-to-day operation and the strategy, how to achieve these objectives for the city, are basically handled by the company and the board.
That's amazing. I think that's really powerful what you mentioned about having this business board really help to, one, get the business knowledge, and separate politician from the policy making, because sometimes it's hard for them to take some of the decision because they need to go back to public. But then they can say it is taken with the business rationale and done. And it's, it's a very good structure, and it's also make sure that the business is driven, like authority is driven more in a business way, not just as a political way, which is important for public transport to thrive.
Yeah, I think because of course you have to respect democracy, and if they really want something, you of course you do it. But it's otherwise you will just add things. It's very easy to add things, and it's getting more and more expensive, and you're hardly taking anything out. So it just builds on. It was impossible to move an effort from one area to another. So one of the reasons why we actually created these early successes was to invest in public transport into areas where you could actually reach the objectives, where you actually could get value from the investments, and you reach these targets that you can actually compete with cars. So you increased the offering, and the quality of the service in areas that had the amount of people, and you could actually obtain a system that was competitive. Otherwise, if you invested that in an area and the system was not competitive, you wouldn't get the passengers, and we didn't, you wouldn't have the reduction in the use of private cars that was in the objective set for us. So I think the ability to sort of direct the effort of and the investments of the public transport system was inevitable when it comes to results. And that is if you start creating results like we did. I remember in the first years they said that to cover they saw that this region was going to have a huge increase in population. It has been for many of these years I've been there, been the fastest growing urban community in Europe. In these, I think a couple of 2 years ago we actually surpassed, since I started, 30% growth in population.
30%. That's
in a little more than 15 years, which is a struggle for any community to handle, just building infrastructure. And we saw that if we were to build road capacity, to cover the increase in transport, it would be very, very hard. It would mean huge infrastructure investments. So they said that could we do this with public transport instead? Make sure that, but then you have to make sure that growth in car traffic reaches as more or less a standstill.
Yeah.
And they thought that, well, that's going to be tough. Give it a try. And basically to achieve that is what we've been doing for these 17 years. It has we covered this growth in demand for motorized transport with public transport, increasing public transport. We have the double amount, twice as many customers now as when I started. Yeah, and the car traffic coming in through the tolls around Oslo is about the 2009 level. So
that's amazing.
With an increase of population of 30%. And if you start creating these results, you actually build the trust with the politicians and your owners. And building your trust, you get the freedom, to try out new things, to innovate, and even do mistakes. Yeah. And innovation without mistakes, I haven't ever heard of that.
That's very impressive, Bernt. I mean, this is like doubling the growth of riders and reducing the car traffic, keeping it same level of 2009, which is quite impressive. And at the same time, population has grown. And rightly you mentioned, I mean, I can see for last 20 minutes, you're focusing on customer-centric. You're highlighting the importance of customer-centric. And like you mentioned, the traditional transport system move people like parcel. So we really need to think about, and I think one of the things you did when you joined Ruter is to start calling passenger as customer. You stop saying passenger, you shift your approach, calling passenger to customer. I want to know, why do you think it's important to call passenger as customer, and how did it change the way you operate? Because sometimes people don't realize when you just call them passenger, you don't feel the duty to serve them better. But the customer can really feel the feeling of like you have to serve them. So what is the ideology behind it?
When I joined, we inherited a ticketing system that was not really a success story. Yeah. It was like most ticketing systems in public transport. It was not there for the customers. It was there for the company, basically. Yeah. So it was. And it didn't work really well, and the business model was actually also to one point in time actually ruined because it was based on tapping, but then not everywhere, and we had to ask the customers to tap even though they had a valid ticket, and if they didn't tap, they could result in getting not a full but a smaller fine for not tapping. And then suddenly the national minister said that there is no way we're going to allow a system that you fine a customer that actually has a ticket. Yeah. And boom, away went the entire business model with this ticketing system. And it created a distance between the company and their customers. We were like sitting on the sixth floor looking down on them,
Yeah.
and they were looking up at us and sort of, why are you not listening to us? Why are you doing all these things that irritates us? So what I did actually, that we said that these people out there, they might be angry at us sometimes and think we sort of irritate them, but they really want to help us. So what I did is I got some really good consultants that it could help us with this, and together with them as interviewers, we went home to the customers, and I basically sat in a coach after traveling her journey to a woman in one of the suburbs, and listening to her describing actually the interaction and actually how we worked for her, actually how her journey turned out. And I was sort of sitting there, because they just listen, don't try to explain. It was really hard, it was really, really hard. But I also learned one thing, that she really wanted to help us, So after this, I sent the entire company, even from the darkest corners of the accounting department, out to see customers, out on the street, And together they had a sheet of paper where you can ask questions. What do we do well? What do you think? Where would you wish you could change? What do we do that irritates you the most? And what came, and then asked them to do something in 2011 that was quite new. Take a selfie with the customer.
Okay.
Ask them if they want to do that. And then we took all these interview forms with the customers and painted the entire office with it. And the experience in the organization is that meeting the customers was not dangerous. These people out there want to support public transport. They want to help us. And they were so glad that we reached out to them, So it was a very positive experience. And I can tell you, pasting, all the walls with these photos was the day we actually turned customer-centric, because it started to build a culture that working together with the customers, they're not only our customers, even, they're actually our owners. So to interact with them and take them in on advice, ask them, work with them, find the new solutions, like I started, understanding the future together with our customers. That builds a culture, that builds a reputation, and that builds trust. And to have this trust out there, creates a lot of colleagues that we can do this together with. They're not only just then customers, they're partners in what we want to achieve, And then it's actually also easier to ask them, at least as a group. If you ask an individual person whether it's a good idea to close his stop, it's. but if you ask them as a group, you will get more respect and understanding, even for taking more difficult decisions. So I think that is a perspective that you can't do. You can't actually just decide it. You actually have to live it, to get to that position. But for me, it was a very much different for working from an organization, that you have a team around you that think this way, than a team that want to impose regulations and fines.
No, and like you mentioned, taking people from the dark corner of the office and sending them on field, it's really powerful. And I tell people, and actually you mentioned in the beginning, is like your customer help you to create your future. So you need to talk to them to understand what's the future you want to do. Now at Oslo,
but I can tell you, I still do it. I go out of the office because you can buy service and expensive consultancy work. But if you are really, if you want to know something about the customers, take the elevator down or even the stairs and go out and talk to some of them. If you talk to 10 and 9 of them thinks it's a good idea, you're probably right. You save some money.
It's a lot of money, and also they, like you said, they feel ownership. They feel like you are listening to them. and they are not the user, they are actually the supporter,
Yeah.
because they are the one who are actually supporting public transport to work in a big way. No, I mean, you are doing a lot of good stuff, and you mentioned something very powerful. If you are doing successful thing, you get more liberty to commit mistake, and
Yeah.
innovation cannot happen without mistake. I mean, Oslo is doing a lot of innovation. Ruter is forefront, I would say, in many stuff. One of the key work you guys are doing is on autonomous vehicle and autonomy, and
Hmm.
Ruter is one of the early adopter of autonomous vehicle. I think you start trialing self-driving vehicle in 2019, and recently you signed agreement with Holo and Moya. So I want to understand like how you see the future of autonomous vehicle and how this deployment will help you to achieve the future objective. Because like you said, you want to create frictionless travel and customer-centric travel for people. So how
Hmm.
you think the autonomous vehicle will help you to achieve that?
Well, this could be, first of all, this is a disruptive technology. Not
Yeah.
only, not, it's an autonomous vehicle is, probably up until now, it has been more on the most application of AI.
Yeah.
It's well, a lot of the algorithms that you need to, to drive, to create a digital driver is based on the most advanced forms of AI up until now. Now we have agentic AI, which is basically gonna transform even more what we do. But
Yeah.
going back to autonomy in vehicles, it has the potential of solving a lot of problems and the potential to create a lot of new ones.
Mm.
I think on the positive side is of course you can have more safety. It could be less injuries and deaths in traffic. You can have a service that's less dependent on the human factors like working time and night driving and driving under difficult conditions. In Norway, we always have the misperception that in bad weather and slippery conditions and snow, we are so good human drivers that that the computers can't compete with us. It couldn't be more wrong. When I drive on ice, I don't measure, the slipperiness or the friction every 10 times every second. The robot will do so.
Yes.
So
Yes.
a lot of the technical driving would be better with autonomous vehicles. But I think the challenge when it comes what kind of system or service or value for the customer it actually creates. Because by default right now, autonomous driving is applied to robotaxis.
Yeah.
Robotaxis are individual journeys, exactly like driving your private car. Individual journeys demand land, demand energy, it creates congestions. It's about all the things that public transport can do, could be a problem solver to. So we could end up having more of the problems that we are already struggling to solve if you do it and if you apply this technology in the wrong way.
Yeah.
So that is, to my opinion, and creating quite a substantial amount of European city followers, is to try to create a service where you can apply this technology without having increased individual transport. And I'm saying this because I think there's still going to be individual transport, even though being a fan of public transport, but to find the right balance, like we have done in Ruter up until now, not creating more individual, journeys in cars, and still having a happy population.
Yeah.
It's even so that the motorists are happy with the toll system around the city, where they're actually paying to increase public transport, which they do when they see the effects of it, that it frees up road space. So how can we apply this new technology with still having enough road space to keep the traffic moving? And that's only if we can make this a shared service. How could we create a data-driven shared service that is so good it would actually make people think twice before they buy at least first maybe a second car.
Yeah.
Because we're always thinking at the most complex problem to solve. But in my city, there's a lot of second cars, and even some families that have a third one.
Third one as well.
Yeah. So how could you, if you take 25% of the market for a second car, if you can make people think twice before they buy the next one, we'll double our business.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how can we do that? And then I think the key is not only the being autonomic. It is connected to how we use the data that we have, and how do we use the insights coming from data, creating a real-time transport system instead of a statistical driven static one, which is normally called public transport. It's based on what people used to do instead of what they actually need right now.
Yeah.
And that is, for me, is the perfect application of using big data real time with the AI algorithms. So that is the strategy behind why we in Ruter in 2016 decided that we were to become a data company, or a data-driven company, which was my mother-in-law saw in the newspapers and said that I just discovered the April Fool's joke in the newspapers, that Ruter becoming a data company. That it's just insane. But to be able to collect that amount of data from your customers, from the city, from our vehicles, to create this platform for designing online transport services, has been connected with self-driving or autonomous vehicles, is something of the future that can solve problems for us instead of creating new ones.
As a CEO of a public transit company, I mean, are you excited about autonomous mobility, or you are scared? Because I talk to a lot of people and I get a mixed reaction. Sometimes people are very excited, sometimes people are scared, and sometimes people have no clue. They feel it's still decades away, and I tell them that's not true. How do you feel in a role of a CEO of a public transport company? Because some people ask me, should we expand rail infrastructure more now, or should we not expand with the technological advancement? And my point will be do you feel it can complement public transport, it can compete public transport, or both? How it will happen?
I'm excited because it's the perfect partner for public transport done in the right way. We can give public transport to people that never experienced public transport.
Yeah.
We can give public transport to an increasing elderly population, which is going to lose their driving licenses, and kept out of mobility. So if you do this, see the opportunities of this, how to integrate it with public transport, I think that's really important. If you have this as a separate system, a separate taxi system, and we don't see how to include it in the network we are running, we risk being stranded assets and have more of the problems that I just mentioned. Then it's a good reason to be scared. If you do it the right way, from my perspective, it could give immense opportunities to give transportation to people that don't have access to it today in a very reasonable way, because we can produce in a bus, 60% in Oslo at least is the cost of the driver. So if you take the driver out, it's going to be a shortage of them anyhow. It is in some cities already. So you probably need to do this not only on demand responsive transport, also on the big, the normal bus lane. Yeah. So it's not about creating new services. It's also about automating the others. And this will, a bus contract is like 10, 12 years. So it's not going to happen overnight. But we have to look at the way to use the workforce that we have for things that we need in society that can't be automated, and automate what we can. And at least that's going to be the case in this part of the world.
No, I fully agree with you. And the driver shortage is real. The manpower is shrinking. And then a lot of people are aging, the old population, they need, and the life expectancy is rising. People want to stay mobile. People want to stay moving around the city. And then you need to provide services. I remember one time you asked me this question is if there any city which is already planning the future infrastructure, and you rightly mentioned, some of the bus contract are next 10 to 12 year, but for sure after next 10 to 12 year there will be these autonomous vehicle which will be running around. So is Ruter planning future infrastructure right now? I mean, are you getting ready for next contract where probably you don't need restroom for driver, you need other kind of facility? So how do you think about creating these future infrastructure now?
First, as a PTA, we're building a new metro line now that's going to be finished in 4 years time. And how to integrate these types of services into that line, how could we actually reach the stations? How could we create an information system that creates a seamless journey for the customers? We're in the midst of doing that now, or thinking of how could that happen. But it's not only autonomous driving; it's also scooters and the other means of transport. In Oslo, when you come to a stop, based on the data we have from the customers in the bus, if you know that on the next stop, a lot of them is going to take a scooter, the number of free scooters pops up on the screens in the bus.
Okay.
So that kind of data integration and seamless transport, we already have started the journey on, but now we're getting a much more competent and partner in these type of vehicles. So integration, we have to think about that, and we for a long time already. We have had the flexibility in the bus contracts, for instance, that a part of the contracts could be changed over to a new kind of, technology.
Oh, that's nice.
So we already have a lot of contracts that have that kind of flexibility built into them, that we could change the way of operation in these contracts if we get this kind of technology available. And it would be more and more important, especially when we look into the contracts that run in rural areas where we have few passengers, drive a lot of school children in the morning and in the afternoon, and the rest of the time drive around with almost empty big buses, where we have to look at the environmental footprint that we make, doing our operations in that way. So to be able to scale almost everything we do based on data is much easier when you don't have to facilitate the cost of a driver that needs a full working day or have a split shift and needs to rest and all that sort of things. You can also utilize these vehicles around the clock because you will be able to drive at the times where there are so few passengers that you just wait for the data and run a demand responsive service instead of a scheduled line. So we really have to rethink the way we organize transport into a sector or into an area, and giving ourselves the flexibility to do that within the next contract period, the contract periods that we currently enter into. So you never know. I'm often asked, when will this happen? And normally about these big shifts in technology, we are quite optimistic about time frame. But we always, in a certain way, underestimate the impact of these changes. And now we have maybe overestimated, and think that it took longer. And then you don't, you're not that, you can't see it that clearly when it actually happens. But I think now, you see that Waymo is coming to Europe. We have all of the cities in the US already been implemented. People, if you go over there after 2 minutes, you stop thinking about that. The steering wheel is going round and round with no one sitting in the front seat. You can see the quality of the driving has increased. Even in the we've been doing this in Oslo as well. You can see that it is not an engineer approach anymore. Actually see car as a communicator. It communicates with the passengers. It communicates with but in driving behavior, it communicates with the traffic, the motorists around it, so you can actually see not only with blinkers, but how the vehicle actually moves, the intentions in traffic. It's getting more and more advanced system. So you can see now it's getting there, but still there is only a few players out there that have the ability to create a full-featured digital driver. But more, I'm sure, will come. and you will see this now being rolled out in an increasing speed.
It will definitely happen. And like you mentioned about the change, it happened very slowly in the beginning, so we don't realize. But
Yeah.
then it happened suddenly, and then we caught off guard and don't realize. And I feel for autonomous vehicles same way. Given the technology is progressing for so many years, it's getting into slowly into the market now.
Mm.
But one day it will be like we will see more and more vehicle running on
Mm.
the autonomous technology. Now, Ruter, you already mentioned this point about like there is a vision to make Ruter as a data company,
Mm.
and you guys are already investing a lot of money into AI, data platform, big data, even quantum computing you are exploring. So which is very amazing because I never heard any transport agency talking about quantum computing. But Ruter is already thinking about these new tool. But a lot of people
I
tell,
could give you an example, because if you're going to create a route where you have all this demand coming in and understanding of the market,
yeah,
where would you ask your passengers to go and meet the bus? If you can make two of them go to the same place,
yeah,
you create a much more efficient way. So we use quantum algorithms on these data, creating these dynamic stop points.
dynamic stop
That
point for the
yeah.
vehicle.
Yeah, that's one application. We already use this technology, even though it's still at a research base. But to understanding how to use this in big data optimization, where if you want to do this, you have to take, if you have 1.2 million journey plans active on your system, and you
Yeah,
get one more, which line or which bus to place that passenger on means that you have to recalculate your entire ecosystem pretty often. Or I think it's like every second. I think we have to do it, to be able to do this. That creates a need for, immense computing power, and you
yeah,
have to find a way to do that without spending too much energy. And we've seen that quantum computing is probably a way to do this, spending less energy than conventional computing. So
that's correct.
that's one of the reasons why we were interested in this, and try, otherwise, AI is going to be one of the real big problems when it comes to energy consumption for the world. And hopefully you can do more sense than creating immense cat videos, uh, and do something sensible with it. And this is probably one of the areas where it makes sense to spend some computing power.
No, that's amazing. I mean, already we are seeing a lot of issue within North America, especially in US, about the power because of this AI uses. So you rightly mentioned about the power consumption will become more and more important. And like that's a very good example you share about how you're using quantum computing and quantum algorithm. I talk to a lot of leader and they say, hey, we are interested in AI, but we don't know what are the real use cases for AI. And also, they still see AI as a cost centric investment. They don't see as a return.
Hmm.
So, from Ruter perspective, have you guys implemented AI strongly in certain area? And did you see some return from that investment? Or it's just another tool? It's like I just invest in IT, but I never get a return back. But did you find anything like getting some return on investment from AI as on today?
Yeah, I think there are more than 100 processes in which is now AI supported. So,
Okay.
uh, and I can give you one example. That ticket inspection.
Yeah.
Uh, that was we had managers that planned ticket inspection. They were setting out where to go, how to get there,
Yeah.
reporting results,
Yeah.
creating a plan for next week based on some of these results, what they wanted to achieve. It's now all done by AI. There is
Mm.
no planning or ticket inspections anymore. There are algorithms that create where to go based on observations where we think there is ovation, but it's also a social accepted algorithm, and it actually creates social acceptance. We don't only go to low income areas.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one of the criteria for the algorithms, is to create socially accepted ticket inspection. And it also, of course, comes up with how should the inspectors travel to get there in the most efficient way.
Okay.
So just taking away two managers that actually did this and put them on more sensible part of the job, you're not paid for the entire thing, and so it's but it has to do how do you approach this. So we started our journey in AI started with going together with the local university, having some student projects and hiring a couple of the professors, and doing some low-hanging fruit task demonstrators with the intention of creating an interest and starting preparing the organization, building a competent demand in the organization, demand understanding what AI can do for us. And after that, we came up with, I think, about 70 different cases coming from the business line, where to find these possible applications for AI support. And we started working, and now the people in AI, the AI department or the AI team that we had is now integrated in the business line. So they're working with the business people, supporting them. But that gave us two types of AI. It gave us the machine learning in these processes, then the operational processes. And it started to use generative AI in business support, generating sentimental analysis. For instance, in CRM, you start, asking people to send complaint and forms to us. We just started scraping social media, finding everyone that talked about us, not only to us, and starting using this data to improve our service, our understanding, our customer satisfaction. So it made it possible for us, to create a real-time customer satisfaction map that we have in the reception. We can actually see what is the status of customer satisfaction right now, and you can see what is wrong and what they think is good, and we can see where the complaints are. Is it connected to some sort of errors in the system, the delays or and the other disruptions? For instance, we can see if a bus is overheated, so we can take it out of service if the air conditioner had gone broke. So there's a lot of active things we could do by monitoring and using language models. Actually, we created the first Norwegian language-based language model in Norway. We've actually beat the main university with a month.
Okay.
Because we needed a better use of the Norwegian language. We even included the Norwegian and Swedish swear word list, so we can actually get the temperature of the language of the customers. But to do this, we could actually take out some people that actually control the air conditioning systems, because we can actually see it from the data that were switched on. If it still didn't work, we have the customers as the real-time witnesses whether it functioned. So we could actually cut back on quality that people actually went to the bus depots and worked. Is the air conditioning switched on? Is it working? So doing it this way, we could actually replace processes with the AI and actually get the benefits out of the system. But this is nothing to do what is now coming in the next wave, and that is it by any means much more serious, because what we do right now is that we look at our processes. Are we doing them the right way? Is there enough role innovation? Is this the right people that does the right things? And to do that, we have another big project together with the organization and the unions, how to create this this transformation that we're probably going to work in a completely different way. We're going to create super workers that are AI supported with different tools. We use a lot of cloud code and vibe coding in creating new processes, and that's basically a big transformation of the entire company. And that's where the true benefits from the investment we made in AI competence, because we call this the AI promise. It's a Norwegian, it's a promise for transformation, but it's also a promise to the people in the organization that we will lift their competence, making them, AI super workers for those who are in position where they actually work in in teams with AI agents. But it's impossible to do that without doing it together with the team, with the people, creating the the forward-leaning atmosphere, the curiosity we need to do this. And when we do that, the real benefits, you can have some benefits from tools, from AI tools, but the real benefits comes with where you use AI as a base for creating new business processes. Then you have to do it in a secure way. You have to look at the data and technology, that you have control over the access to these technologies, and you have to have a plan B, and all these security issues you also have to solve. But it will be irresponsible not to apply this kind of technology in this way, seeing the huge potential benefits you will have when it comes to higher quality, less errors, less costs, a lot of benefits that we're currently looking for that are substantial working with AI in this way.
No, that's amazing. I mean, the point you mentioned about vibe coding and having this real-time customer heat map to understand what are the key customer complaints. So you don't need to wait for a 6-month survey or 1-year survey to identify, because then you can't take any action to improve it. And here you also win the confidence of customer, because if they complain about something and next day if they see it is rectified or it's corrected, they feel more engaged in the system, and the customer loyalty will increase. So that's really super.
We also learned some lessons, and one of them was that they have first of all, you have to handle personal data. You have to find that, because customers share a lot of things they shouldn't do on social platforms. That so I think we spent most time on developing this system by getting rid of the personalized data that we didn't want to handle.
Yeah.
But we also thought it was a good idea that somebody that claimed about delayed bus posted on the media. We actually could see who posted it. We can see what kind of bus it was. We could actually see the statistics of the bus, so we can know, is this true or has it happened a lot lately. So we could generate an answer back to an agent answering on the social platform. Hello, John. You're absolutely right, and you're so sorry that the bus is delayed now again. And here's the link to your refund. It's not a good idea to do that in less than a second, because you create an immense sense of surveillance. They will start looking over their shoulders. Who's watching this? They should be concerned posting on social medias anyhow. But there is some considerations you should make about I think it could be too steep a conversion if you do something like that. So we actually put a delay on a minute or a couple of minutes before we get that sort of answers,
so that they feel like it's not somebody watching us. Now, this is one of the questions I want to ask you, because you mentioned we are not estimating the wave of AI coming. The next generation will be much more powerful and all. And a lot of organizations are now having these agents, AI agents, working in their offices along with the human staff. You mentioned the importance of team, but I feel these AI agents will be much more powerful in coming days. So at Ruter, you have already developed some AI agent to work with the staff member?
Yeah. So we have I can highly recommend a top management event is pizza and cold coding.
Oh, pizza and cold calling.
I did that with my management group a couple of months ago. And because it's now the threshold of understanding how this technology is working is now it's like Chat GPT. It was the first time my mother could understand what AI actually could do. And to have your people in the organization understanding what vibe coding can do. And I think one of the is going to be vital, because it's going to be a part of a lot of the types of job we do, at least in the PTA. There are of course jobs out there that are not going to be that affected, but there's a lot of jobs that are gonna be affected. And to understand where this is taking us, and to avoid one common mistake, and that is to see all the child diseases that these technology have and think they're going to be forever. I heard so many times people say that this was a problem and this is a problem with this technology, and now this development goes so fast that when we first started adopting Cloud Code, we see that there was a lot of security issues and there was a lot of issues with it. Now we use it to find security holes instead of being worried about the holes in the code that the system created. And that's something where advancement and improvement happens in weeks, not in years or months. So what's true today about faults and weaknesses might be solved just in days. You never know. So if you think you can't use a technology for one thing because of aspects with it, it might not be true. In just a short time. That is something where, and that doesn't mean we should think everything is safe. No, but we have to find way to what if it becomes safe? And that's more likely to happen if more people are concerned about it. The problem will be solved. And don't the speeches I held about concerns about safety 2 months ago might not be relevant anymore.
That's true.
So this is things that are developing so fast now. The truth is moving when it comes to these kind of aspects. And I'm not saying this because there are not things to be concerned about, but be careful about holding them for carved in rock. It might change. It might change, even though some fundamentals are going to be with us for at least some time.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, Claude has not released yet their new version, which is Mythos, for finding the cybersecurity bugs because they feel it's so powerful, it can take down any system. And my worry is nobody is concerned in transportation sector because we are much more connected than ever. And if that is true, like you said, how can we make a system safe? And we should use that tool to make our system safe rather than get worried about that it can find vulnerabilities, but actually it can help us to make it much more safer.
Yeah, and we actually have to also take more responsibility, I think, for our own safety. And that's one of the reasons why we took 2 hour buses, one an older electric bus and a brand new one, and drove them into a mine and say what kind of communication is coming out of them, and how could what kind of cybersecurity is built into them? Could they be manipulated? Could somebody hack them, stop them, make them inaccessible in a critical situation? And I saw that I wish there were more grown-ups in that room. We found things that all of the. First of all, I have to say that we're not surprised what we found. It was actually better than we hoped, than we feared. A bus is probably like 3, 4, 5 years behind a modern car. The technology on the car is much more advanced and has many more security aspects than the current generation of buses. But that will change. The next generation will have much of the same issues that we saw with the cars. Unless we as a business now start raising the bar when it comes to demand in our purchases. We have to ask for more and better cybersecurity in vehicles, and that could be solved. But if you don't ask for it, why should the supplier invest in it and add the cost to it? Unless we actually come up with these clear demands on what kind of security we actually will have or request on the vehicles that we operate. It's not like old days where it was just the cables and it's a connected device now with software updates. And that's a completely new environment for handling something like cybersecurity.
Yeah, I mean, you can't, earlier days you can close your vehicle inside a garage or in a closed environment, but nowadays nothing is controlled because it's connected over the internet, and like you mentioned, they are much more connected. The the experiment you mentioned about it was quite publicized at that time, like when you took two buses to the mines and discover. Did you, like you said, you didn't feel much feared with what you found, but did it change your perception about the future tendering? Like you mentioned, now you're thinking about how to make your tender much more robust and all. So what kind of lesson you want to share with others, like when they are procuring these new vehicle, especially the electric buses, which are much more connected than the traditional one? What three or four key area they should look for?
Yeah, first I would say that, yeah, well, is this an electrical bus problem? No, no.
Okay.
I would say any connected vehicle, if you wanna add a code that, will sort of start ruin your battery in an electric bus,
Yeah.
you can just as well add the code that will, crash your diesel engine. So I think it's nothing really to do with electric buses or the drivetrain. It has to do with connectivity. So basically, if you are connected, you can receive or you can have software on board your or vehicle that, in certain circumstances, could be manipulated in a way you don't want to happen. That could be, a part. It was much political discuss whether that was a part of the vehicle from the start. But I would say it's much more likely that somebody with a bad intention will hack into it.
Yeah.
Because if you stop your own bus, you will hardly sell any more buses. So why should you? It's a bad reputation to do. If that happens, it would, it be the most extreme cases. But it's to protect it from malicious third parties is a much more likely scenario. And for that reason, the code might get in there by software updates. It could use backdoors in ships, pretty advanced technologies to do so, which fortunately I would say we have in common with windmills and generators and much other critical infrastructure. So I think we must cooperate with those and that have the same problem, and find common solutions, because this demands capacity that or competence that most PTAs and bus operators don't have.
That's true.
So how do we actually create this kind of competence and make it accessible, so you can actually put that kind of precautions into tenders and technology specifications, so we can actually make this industry safer? I think that's a completely new world out there now that we actually have to adapt to, and we can't do that alone. We actually have to do it as businesses that has this common challenge.
I agree. And it's also the capacity issue, and also the knowledge, like the talent. You don't have all the talent available within the same organization. And this is one of the questions when I talk to a lot of leaders. This is the kind of trade-off they struggle with. They feel like we are a traditional public transport company, whether authority and operator, and our role is to operate vehicles. They don't want to be the front leader for innovation. And you said something very powerful. You said innovation cannot happen without mistake. But the problem is, if mistake happen, it's all over the newspaper and it being publicized and created this news. What is your experience about, how to balance between being innovative at the same time operating these critical infrastructure? End of the day, Ruter is providing the mobility services. You're not just there to experiment or innovate, or you have some other thought in your mind.
No, I would, it's a very good question, and it has to be a balance. We are perceived as quite innovative and doing, like you said, a lot of interesting new things. But as out of the total revenue of Ruter, I think we spend 0.89% on development projects. I don't think you find any private company that have this risk profile, that they use so little in an industry that's in a disruption. I think, if you see that, if you're in this industry is disrupting and the risk of stranded assets is high, and you spend a lot of money on infrastructure, what is more risky?
Yeah.
I would say doing nothing is by far the riskiest. And I think you have, and if you lean a little bit more forward, and you say that you do mistakes, I think it was Nelson Mandela who said that I never win or lose, I win or learn.
Yeah.
So it's about creating small, cheap mistakes, which are suitable for learning, instead of creating big catastrophes, where what normally happen if you do something that you have no, if you continue to do something that you always done, that the world has, left behind, that could create far bigger disasters than actually doing learning and keeping in path with using the technology and understanding it and trying to make better services for the customers. And if you can see, look in the mirror and see that it actually created the results I just,
Yeah.
that I talked about, you can say that the board and my politicians says to me, we just want Ruter to be that kind of company. And it's based on creating results that we always overachieved our budgets. We always created, a higher customer satisfaction and a ratio when it comes to market share, competing with the car, has been higher than people actually thought we could achieve. And if you do that, and they ask me to do it without innovation, I would say that that's impossible. No, you have to find the right mix. Doing exactly enough. And if you create an organization like that, you have all the talents coming to work for you. We need those new talents now working for public transport, and to have them to come and work with us. If you're not really creating an interesting job, how could you expect them to come? So doing what we've been doing on AI, which I told you we actually could put to a lot of the project actually put directly to the bottom line. My daughter studies at the university in Bergen, and she talked to me one day and said that all these people in AI, they actually talk about their favorite summer job would come and work for Ruter.
Oh, okay.
And I said that then we achieve something. So
That's true.
So to do that, you have to work together with students, and you have to create interesting working places and an interesting job when it comes to content. But I also said that, and I haven't said that, and I haven't mentioned that, we have this fantastic vision. It's the sustainable freedom to move. We're actually in the world's best business. We're in the freedom business. The freedom to move is in one of the most important aspects of freedom, which is, at the heart of humanity.
Yeah.
If people can't move, they're not free. So we're not in public transport. Public transport, is a very interesting business, but the impact of public transport is freedom.
That's true.
Could you be in a better business? And and if you want to attract young people to come and work for you, you have to give them purpose. And could you give them any better purpose than this? To be in a forward-leaning company that actually is customer-centric and looks at new solutions using advanced technologies and actually provide some of the most important aspects of life. Creating the freedom to move for these inhabitants and customers and travelers in our region. That, makes this quite a different employer than the one I joined 17 years ago.
That's very true. And your point about doing nothing is more riskier in this today's world than doing something and experimenting and creating. And like you said, like all the young people want to work for Ruter. That's a big achievement because that's what people are struggling with. Now, I want to shift a gear a bit and want to talk about your leadership philosophy. And like you mentioned, you were running Ruter for last 18 years and you are doing a lot of interesting stuff. But let's say if you had to start Ruter again today, what would you do differently? Because you created a legacy now for 18 years, but let's say somebody asks you, hey, you need to now create a new agency. How will your leadership philosophy will change for today's world?
Yeah, well, all good decisions have one thing in common. They were taken too late.
Yeah.
So I will probably recognize the need for speed even more. Try to move faster. But we also always work as a team. And in my career, creating teams, especially at the top management level, spending a lot of time together, understanding the power of diversity. Diversity creates innovation. If you have all the people the same, or you have people that only share for you, sitting on the stands, clapping for every move you do, it's you have to find the people that are different from you, because they're probably better at things you are not good at. And if you really want to work with these people, you have to accept diversity. But diversity, just as diversity, is just costs. Diversity, if you learn how to harvest it, is gold.
That's true.
So to create diversity is the best recommendation I can give for creating, an atmosphere for innovation. I would also say that, creating a team that could actually tell their opinions, creating the psychological safety, or an atmosphere of sharing where you can actually disagree. It's if you don't dare to disagree, you will never get the second opinion out.
That's true. That's true.
So for me, it's all about creating team culture, and having a diverse team culture. I remember starting this. A psychologist came to me and said that in your management team, there's one person who's just about to leave, and I said, I can't wait. This person is so different and always complains, and I never understands what I'm telling her to do, And I said, well, the rest of them are quite like you. They don't say anything, They just share you. And after that, I really understood something about how to create a culture where the top management is a team, where I can any day leave. And I'm absolutely sure that things will, turn out probably, maybe even for the better, But that your top job, the most important job as a CEO, is to create this team and keep it alive.
That's so powerful, and I really love your point about having this diversity, not just for the sake of diversity, but really bringing diversity of thought and knowledge and experience and expertise. That's very powerful. Now, the world is changing very fast, technology and all, and you mentioned the young people are excited to work for Ruter. What advice would you give to the young professional entering the space today with this rapid technology change, and any skill or mindset they should absolutely need to develop to survive for next 15, 20 years? I'm worried about my kids, because I feel like, what is the skill I should teach them? Is it technology? Is it creativity? Is it public speaking? Is it language? What, according to you, is the skill people should develop?
First of all, I would recommend turning that question around. Actually, people in my age should more often ask younger people what they think I should do.
I agree.
I would be very concerned about asking a person in my age with a gray beard what the future talents should choose. I think we have a responsibility to take care of them. Right now, I'm a bit worried, and that means the introduction of the AI models now is taking away the first wave of jobs. Is going to go is junior jobs. In consultancy companies, they're already gone. So a career that normally started with going to getting high grades from a top university grade, and going to a consultancy company, learning processes, and starting on a career. That career route is blocked. It's not. It's almost gone. And we since agentic AI is taking over so many jobs now. Getting from a university and into this type of competence work into organization is getting harder. We almost shut that door, and we don't. I don't think we actually realize the consequences of that. It's so fresh, and that these young talents and students can do nothing about. We can do something about that. We really have to think about that, because what seems like short-sighted good decisions could be a very tough curve to get around for young people today getting into the getting employed. Yeah. So first of all, I would consider that, and then in other parts of labor, like plumbers and carpenters and things like that, and unless until they have the humanoids,
Yeah.
there's still going to be a lot of need for these kinds of jobs, also in healthcare. But this in this competence heavy workforce, it's the disruption. I think I can already see that the disruption happening there is pretty tough, and we really need to make sure that we in 5 years have senior consultants, and because we don't have any juniors to recruit from. Yeah.
Nobody promoted across the level, so then you have a vacuum. All across.
So that is one of my concerns, that I think we as true grown-ups should be more concerned about, and not dump on the students. Yeah.
No, I fully agree. I saw one organization and they did that, to cost save 25 years back, they stopped hiring for 5 years. And nobody realized the impact of that hiring for 5 years, because 25 years later, they didn't had anybody with experience range. So they either had more senior people who are about to retire, and they had like a very junior people. So they feel like, now who will fill that gap? So like you said, we are not realizing the short-term benefit today, that how can it will impact. If we don't have a junior consultant, we will not have people who gain experience over the period of time and become a senior consultant and do that. And it'll be very powerful. Now, this is my last question, but looking ahead to 10, 15 years, what do you think will fundamentally change in urban mobility? I mean, are we underestimating autonomous vehicle and AI, or we are overestimating? Like, what do you feel? Like you said, you're worried. So I want to understand what's your worry level?
I don't, worry is something you should reserve for something you can address. It's a big waste to worry about things you can't address. Well, it's not as easy as that, but still, no, I would say it's harder than ever. I think I was just interviewed by the newspaper here, because they came up with my predictions 10 years ago and said that you were
2016.
You were mostly right. But what do you think now? And I said it's much harder this time. It's much harder this time, and it's AI that makes it harder. The speed is hard to predict because it's so exponential. This is a system and a world that actually develops itself. It can solve its own problems in a increasing better way than we can solve them.
Yeah.
And that's hard to predict how fast that's gonna go. But still, things that are going slow are still going to go slow. Population development is still gonna be very predictable. And big investments is going to be predictable. So the big investments we made in infrastructure, it's going to follow the path. I think land is not being made anymore, so we have what we have. You have to look for those things that are moving in a slow pace and see what impact is this slow pace still going to have on development. And then you're going to look for those who got the things that are going to move fast, like technology. So if you look at public transport, you see that things that are based on big investments, lack of land, like metro systems and rail and things like that. They as long as you're going to move people and you have little land and you have little time to do it, some of these technologies has not been challenged really. You can't do that with the autonomous taxis. You can't replace a train. So unless you have another technology that we haven't seen yet that can do it, I think we're still going to see a lot of these heavy capacity structures. So I think it is a lot of it has to do with how we implement these new technology in these structures, creating better customer services. Better services for the customer. And that we've been covering that, seeing how could we create shared autonomous transport that are data driven and comes
Yeah.
closer to given the impression of having access to a transport system. People don't buy a car because they want to drive with it. They only do it 5% of the time. They buy it because they can drive with it. They have access to driving and to the freedom of mobility they have when they actually have access to a car. So that is what we need to replicate to become a better and more, a public transport system that meet these needs in a better and more sustainable way than producing more cars that people buy and not use and park.
Yeah.
So I think hopefully we'll be better at doing that, and that we can keep the inner parts of the cities and the surroundings to ourselves instead of infrastructure and concrete and moving objects at high speed that will be dangerous. And even though they're electric and non-polluting, they still take up space that could be used better. And I'm optimistic about that. I think that technologies will give us better cities because that's really the target. And more livable and more sustainable cities where you can actually have more feeling of freedom to move instead of less. And doing so, I think it's achievable without overspending the resources that we have on this planet, as long as we can. And I always say that if we travel together when we can, and alone only when we have to, we will achieve much.
That's true. That's so true. That's so true. It'll solve a lot of problem. And in fact, recently there is a study came which say if US city want to develop public infrastructure like a public transport infrastructure like Europe, they need to spend around $4.9 trillion. So a lot of times city don't realize the real benefit of these infrastructure. And like you said, you can't move so many people by road. So you have to have rail in some of the infrastructure, and these rail can really help to make this happen, these public infrastructure and making better city. No, but thank you so much. I didn't realize, we spent so much of time, and it was such a great conversation. I can keep talking to you for hours and get a lot of knowledge. Generally, we end this podcast with a rapid fire round and have some question for you. So let me know if you're ready for that. Okay. So let's say if you're not in the logistic and transportation sector, what would you be doing?
That was a hard question because if I had an answer to that, I probably would have left. But why should I?
That's so true.
I think it would be in an industry where that means something to people, and which I always have chosen. But right now, I'm having so much fun. So why should I even think of it?
That's great. No, we want you to be in the sector and keep sharing your experience and knowledge with us. Now, I know you can be biased. I mean, Oslo is one of the wonderful city, but which is your favorite city in the world and why?
I love to spend time in nature, and even in Svalbard, in the Arctic nature, where you're absolutely alone and only together with polar bears. But when you ask city, it have to be New York City. It's the city above cities. It's so much city as a city can be.
That's true.
And has a special sound when you get there. But then again, there's so many lovely cities. I would say I recently went to last year to Sydney, which is close to the ocean, beautiful beaches. Of course, Oslo, like you said, has a lot of qualities. If you go to any city, you find qualities. Most of them are unique in one way, and the people that live there find and love these qualities. And it's up to us to be curious enough to find them.
That's true. That's so true. I mean, you need to be curious enough to find what makes that city unique and different. Now, a book or idea that has influenced your thinking, like any book or idea you really admire and really helped you.
Normally I would say that people inspire me more than books. I'm not a big reader of piles of management books. It's there's a lot.
I have plenty in my back, but
yes, and I sometimes feel even get some sort of a bad conscience because I don't read them all. but I think I'm more sort of a media type of guy. But most of all, acting together with people, in conversation with people, I always learn a lot. Being curious about what people have done, thinking new ways about things the stories they have told me, looking at the technologies and what could be the second version of this technology. What would happen if you apply this in another way than currently being done. This way of thinking, I think, have inspired me the most, by trying to see new applications or see what might happen in the future. But first and foremost, if I were to sit in a room where there was only a screen and a book, or I would have achieved nothing of whatever happened. It's the people that has, that's the glory of teamwork, and inspiration from other people that creates, in my world, creates wonders.
No, it is always wonderful. Like this conversation, I learned a lot, so which I can't get in a book. One thing do you wish you should have learned early in life?
I think I just answered that a few minutes ago. And that's faster.
Faster.
Yeah. So it might create more mistakes, but the benefit you get from doing the better things faster, I think will overshadow that. It will. I think the world need good decisions to be taken faster, and of course avoid some of them that are really bad. And in the world right now, out there is a lot of I would say possibilities.
Yeah, that's true. We need to take more decision. If you can just keep thinking, then you will never take a decision. Now, this is my last question. If you can change one thing in life, what would it be?
Well, that's a question I never think about. Because it's easy to say peace on earth and things like that. It's especially these days. I would say there's so many things I wish humanity would do differently. So there's an endless row of things. It's hard to find the winner.
That's true.
There's too many options that should have been undone and should have been changed. But I think now, if we all take more responsibility for what we do, if I can inspire people to engage in things that should be changed, I could be better.
That's so powerful.
I think that's an aspect. I've done that, more of that in my later years than I did in my first years as a manager, and I never get those years back.
That's true. Once time is gone, it never come back, and then you realize, like, okay, no, but that's very powerful when you said is like, if we all start taking more responsibility for our action in every possible way, that can actually make the world better, instead of questioning others and pointing at other. It start from us. No, thank you so much, Bernt. It's really great insight. I mean, I didn't realize the time. We spent more than 90 minutes in this conversation, and I didn't feel, I said like we just started. So really wonderful to have this conversation with you, and really wish you good luck with all the key initiative you're having.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you like this episode, please don't forget to give us a 5-star rating, as it will help us to spread our message. If you have any feedback or suggestion for this podcast, please feel free to reach out to us at info@mobility-innovators.com. I look forward to see you next time. Thank you.